JJ the CPA here. Hope you're doing well. So, how could there be funds left in the PPP program when we know it was reported by the SBA that the funds ran out in May of this year and the program ended May 31st of this year? Well, the reality of it is, yes, it did run out in terms of loans being provided, but it has been reported by the U.S. House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus crisis that there is approximately around 84 billion in fraud related to the PPP and EIDL program. The New York Times just did a story here in the last week and indicated that there's most likely going to be 76 billion in fraudulent loans in the PPP program. So what does that mean? Well, if there's fraudulent loans, then that's money that's been dispersed out of the PPP program that should be coming back to the PPP program. So how does that affect you if you already got PPP? Well, if you didn't either get enough or you didn't apply in time, or if you are a self-employed individual and you got the Paycheck Protection Program amount based on your net of Schedule C, line 31, instead of the last minute changes that allowed Schedule C filers to get it based on line 7, which is the gross income, this could be potentially an opportunity that if funds are going back into the Paycheck Protection Program, that potentially you would be able to benefit from. How? Well, let me first tell you that my concern here is that H.R. 3684, which is a bill that has passed the Senate, it is to be voted on soon by the House. The Speaker of the House has indicated it'll be voted on no later than September 27th of this year. But there is a section in this bill, and I'm going to give you a link to the bill, but section 90007, D and G, again, I'll put a link to the bill and you can look that up. But it, in essence, permanently removes any unobligated funds of the PPP program. So what does that mean? Well, what it indicates is that any monies that would in essence be paid back, or any monies that would be deemed that they were fraudulently loaned out, that in essence is then coming back to the PPP pot, the program, the fund. Well, it is, if this bill becomes law, it is then not for any future PPP needs. So the way that the government works is, and you may know this, but when they allocate funds to a program, if there are funds left over, then if the government already earmarked it for that program, then funds that are left over would continue to be for that program, especially if there continues to be a need. Historically, we know this to be true because there were PPP funds left over in 2020, meaning it didn't run out. Last year, there were funds that were still sitting in that program last year, and those funds were then gathered up and then used for the PPP that was loaned out in 2021. We also know that there, outside of fraudulent funds, there are going to be those that just simply got PPP incorrectly, and therefore they're having to, in essence, pay it back. I know that's over a period of time that they have to pay back any amount that's not forgiven. So we could be looking easily at 75 billion, 84 billion has been reported by these other organizations. How soon would those funds be back in there is anybody's guess. But what we don't want to have happen, in my opinion, knowing that there's small businesses that continue to be in need for the PPP program, especially under certain and current conditions of potential certain closures or restrictions on businesses, or businesses in some jurisdictions being required to obtain a vaccine card for the customers to be able to be served at least physically in a location, which are all interruptions to a business. And all politics aside, if that's right or wrong, nonetheless, businesses are being affected by that. That's what the Paycheck Protection Program was meant to do, is help businesses that are being affected by this pandemic, to last year to this year. And so when we see that that's continuing, it seems as though the need is still going to be there. Also a need for the self-employed. If you are getting, previous to early March of this year, if you were getting PPP and it was based on the net, line 31, that's obviously going to be less than if it was based on the gross income, that top line item. Now, we do know for the self-employed, the max that the self-employed can get on their own self-employment income, outside of the fact that they may have employees that they also could get PPP on. But for the self-employed Schedule C, Schedule F filer, outside of their employees, if any, the max they can get is $20,833. Now, that's a lot of money to a self-employed individual that's scratching it out. And if it's based on the net of what they got previously, they might have only got $2,500 to $5,000. Those are some of the averages that I'm aware of in terms of the Schedule C filer. So getting that much more can make a big difference, especially for our smallest of businesses that are filing Schedule C, and then our farmers and ranchers filing Schedule F. The reason I'm going through all that math with you is, let's think of this. How many more small business owners, Schedule C filers, and the self-employed could get additional funds if there is $75 billion left over, if I just kind of go with an average there of what's being reported? A lot. So many times when they know that there's going to be funds left over in various programs in the past, the EIDL grant being one that we can look at here recently and historically, they have come up with additional programs for the smallest of businesses. We know with the EIDL grant, they came out with the targeted grant, and then they came out with the supplemental targeted grant, which was only then available for those employers with 10 or less employees. Now, granted, it was $5,000, but nonetheless, that helped a lot of small business owners that have a very small amount of employees. And when you look at how most small businesses have less than 10 employees, it is staggering, the amount. And then the amount of Schedule C filers is also staggering. So I feel as though it would be helpful for you to contact your congressperson or senator to let them know that, in essence, you don't want HR 3684 to pass that would include a provision to permanently end PPP, and more specifically to permanently remove any obligations of the PPP program to be for the PPP program. So that bill, I'm repeating myself, the bill indicates that it permanently rescinds any unobligated funds left in PPP. Why would it even be in the bill? Well, the reason is that it's clear that Congress is aware, and I don't mean in a negative way, but it's clear they're aware there are going to be leftover funds in PPP. Otherwise, why would this be even included in a bill? So, in my opinion, I wouldn't want the unobligated funds to no longer be available for small business owners. For me, it would make sense for small business owners to continue to benefit on any funds that are left over. So for funds that are having to be repaid, and for funds that are having to be given back due to fraudulent. Now I understand some that got it fraudulently may have already spent it, and so, well, how's the government going to get the money back? Nonetheless, I don't want to give you false hope that you're going to get PPP. I'm not trying to give you false hope that there is another PPP program coming. What I do want to give you hope for is the reality that there's going to be money left in the PPP program due to these reasons at some point. And given that we're still experiencing economic distress, if you will, due to the pandemic, it makes sense that those funds be left over for future use whenever that money is getting back in the pot. And millions have already been put back in the pot. So yes, all the money got loaned out, but there's money coming back to the PPP program. And HR 3684, again, rescinds the ability permanently for any funds put back into PPP to be then used for future purposes for the same reasons that we had PPP. So it doesn't indicate what happens to those funds. It just says they're no longer going to be a part of the PPP program. So when we're talking about, 84 billion as the U.S. House Select Subcommittee is estimating, New York Times is estimating 76 billion in our stimulus program here. That's a lot of money that could be coming back, and that's a lot of money that could help small business owners. So in the body of this email as well, I'm going to give you the technical language that if you contacted your U.S. Senator or Congressperson, you have the specific of what you're requesting. And you don't have to put together a lengthy letter or fax or email or tweet. If you just put together something that indicates that you don't want PPP to be permanently rescinded, they should get the message, at least that there's people that are concerned about it. If you mention HR 3684 and section that I'm going to put in here, that's helpful. So I do have some tweets and some Facebook posts that you could look at. You could retweet or reshare them. The key there, though, is to retweet and tag your congressperson or senator, or better yet, just tweet or do something on social media or Facebook and tag your U.S. congressperson or your U.S. senator and indicate your concern. Now, if you got max PPP, you don't need PPP, your business isn't affected, that's great, but there are a lot of other small businesses that could still benefit from this program, and especially the self-employed that weren't able to go back and get PPP under the new calculation. I think that affected millions of small business owners, that especially the ones filing Schedule C. As a side note, and I'll mention this in a future video for those that got to hear, I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you, but also in HR 3684, it includes in section 80604 that the ERTC program to end September 30 of this year, when right now the law is that it doesn't end until December 31st of this year. So it would be ending it a full quarter early. It would be ending it in essence 3 months early. And that's only about 8 billion. Now only, but that's a lot of funds that could help small businesses that have had a reduction in their gross receipts to help in essence cover payroll that they either need to make or had made. And so the way I look at it is ERTC 8 billion. We're talking about funds potentially going back into the PPP program at 76 billion according to New York Times, 84 billion according to the U.S. House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Crisis. Huge. Both of these programs are helping small business owners. So I'll do a separate video about the ERTC, but you also could tweet or do a post on social media about the ERTC as well. I'm going to do a shorter video about this because many, when seeing a video at the length of just under 15 minutes, may not want to watch that. So I'm going to repeat this message in another video. I did another video last week on this, but I didn't have these numbers that I came across from these two sources of how much could be left over or available in the PPP program in the future. Listen, if you got to here and you're not a subscriber, I'd love it if you subscribe. I'm providing value and trying to help small business owners. And typically, as a side note, I know other YouTube channels ask you to subscribe up front. I ask for you to subscribe at the end because I feel as if I am giving you value, then maybe it's appropriate for me to ask you to subscribe. So I would love it. All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. And then don't you ever forget, you've never met a CPA quite like me. All right. Have a great one.